welcome you to our program today. We have a very special guest with us. Her name is Sister Mary Patricia Conlan, otherwise known as Sister Pat. So Sister Pat, thank you so much for coming and being part of our program today. And one of the things that is so interesting about Sister Pat is her ministry. And her ministry with the homeless people here in Dubuque, Iowa. And so, Sister Pat, I just really admire you, and I want to thank you for your work and what a challenging ministry that this is, working with homeless people. And so how long have you been doing this?
Actually, I've been doing it for 57 years.
57 years.
57 years. I got into it because I grew up poor myself.
All right.
And I saw the handicaps of not having what I needed, not being able to get health care for a family member. And because of that, that family member is challenged.
Okay.
And I thought, if I can do anything to prevent this for somebody else, that's where I'm headed. And that's how the vocation to working with the poor started.
Yeah, so 57 years, you said.
57 years working with the poor.
And so as far as different communities that you've been doing this in?
You know, it doesn't make any difference. I worked in Appalachia, worked in the Delta in Mississippi, worked the Amazon in South America. Now back to our own jungle here in Dubuque.
So you've been all over or in a lot of different places then.
Been sent to where there was a need to work with the homeless and to where a lot of people didn't want to go. I felt called to go there because I think what's important is the dignity of every single person.
It doesn't matter what part of the country or what part of the world.
I don't care where they come from. We're all human beings.
Yeah.
And for me, each person is created in the image and likeness of God, and because you're a child of God, you have a right to the dignity that is yours.
Yeah, wow.
And so I think to have that dignity, you can't be homeless, because to be homeless means that you don't have the basic needs. You don't have shelter, you don't have food, you don't have clothing, you have no way to get an education. You can't pay for your bills because you don't have a job or the skills to be able to do that. So you end up with the basic things that you and I take for granted every day that people who are homeless just don't have.
So it's not, so when we hear of homeless, it implies, well, this person doesn't have a home, which is one of the basic needs, but it's more than just homeless. It's foodless, it's coatless, and lots of lesses, isn't there? I mean, there's lots of ministry, lots of needs here.
Right. But I think what happens is people will say, oh, they're just lazy. They don't want a job, they don't want to work. It's not true. Because when you work with the homeless on the streets and you take the patience and you take the time to listen to their stories, you find out who they are and how they got there. So in my work, every day I'll hear about the person who grew up in a dysfunctional family, to where there was domestic abuse in some cases, in other cases where a mother or a father was on alcohol or on drugs, and these kids were on their own. So many times nobody in the house but them. And very often what they would do is join a group that they wanted to belong to. It's sad to say that was a gang. Because they wanted to belong to somebody somewhere, to where they could connect and have a common purpose. Sad to say, it often became the wrong purpose, because it led them into crimes and drugs and alcohol and everything they didn't want to go, because that's what they lived in to begin with. So what happens is, what's important, I think, in street ministry, which is what I do, is that as I'm out there, I'd say probably 45% right now have mental challenges.
45%, okay.
About 45%. Part of that's because we haven't really offered assistance to people who are mentally ill or don't have the opportunities or the facilities here for it. Like right now, you have probably got to go to Waverly, which means they don't have any transportation to get there. So that's another handicap. We can say, oh, just hop in the car and go, but when you don't have a car and you don't have money to pay for the taxi, you go by foot. Okay? So you have people out there who are dysfunctional, coming from dysfunctional families. You have other folks out there who are the new poor. That's very common right now in Dubuque, because you or I could have a job today and lose it tomorrow. Makes no difference if you're the head of a company or whatever. So for example, when a company here in town laid off folks, in some cases, both parents were working at the same facility. All of a sudden, the person who had a middle-class upper salary was on the street.
Mm-hmm.
That person did not know what poverty was, never experienced it, and was a fish out of water. Up here they were, now they no longer are, and they don't belong down here either with the people who are struggling every day because they haven't been there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And now here they are in the middle. They don't fit here, they don't fit here. So where are they? They're living in their cars. So out there you're trying to say to them, where are your children? Some of those children are now homeless in the sense that they're living with friends of the family. They're living with neighbors of the family. You have the school bus coming and picking them up in the motels because they don't have a home.
Is that right? Wow.
You get a whole family living in a room in a motel. And that's what they live out of. Well, they go to work 2 or 3 different jobs or wherever they can earn a little money, but they want their children in school, so they're out with family. So somewhere else, adopted family, neighbors. So what happens is you have the whole family system broken up, where the kids then don't have the integration or the communication with their own families. A mother and a father, as they knew the family, is now all separated. So that's a faction people don't think of, the homeless children in Dubuque that are going to school because they're living with a neighbor or a friend.
Yeah, so one of the misconceptions, or maybe one of the the challenges that people are facing, just in terms of just trying to define just what is homelessness. When you talk about, well, when you have family members or children who are, I've always heard this term kind of couch surfing. They're just kind of sleeping on a friend's couch because they don't have any other place to go, or people who are on the streets. Is there a real definition for what just constitutes the homeless?
I said in the beginning, is a person who is without the basic needs of life.
Without
Shelter,
the basic
food,
shelter.
clothing, transportation, education, that you and I take for granted.
Yes, okay.
And that's why people will say, why don't you just go get a job?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, they don't know where to go, they don't know who to go to, and they don't know what's being offered. Now here's an example. Most of the young people who are out there are homeless now, teenagers up to about 20, 30 years old, some 40 that I work with, don't have a high school education yet.
Okay.
So you don't go very far without a high school diploma.
Right.
And in many cases today, you don't go too far with one either. Because in this area of Dubuque, the jobs that are offered are usually like John Deere, jobs that have skills, and you have to know your mathematics, your sciences, the skills to get that job and run the computers. They don't have it. They don't have the basic skills that we would learn in grade school.
Mm-hmm.
Because they dropped out of school to join a gang or to survive on the streets. Because they didn't have a mother or father to look after them that was responsible.
Okay.
So in many cases, you've got a mother who's trying to raise several children on her own because the person responsible for the fathering of the children or fathers of the children have left to impregnate more people, sad to say.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the reality of society today. So the majority of homeless people out there are mothers and children.
Okay.
So what has to happen then is, let's say I'm out there working, I'm going to find out someone who doesn't have their education as far as high school. I will connect them with the Dubuque Center where they can be tutored for their high school diploma and get their GED, or now what they call the high school equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
You had a HISED, high school education diploma. Same thing as we used to call GED, but now the standards are higher to fit what the state requires. But it means they can get it done if they want to, and there are tutors who will help them. Not only at the Dubuque Center, but here in Dubuque we have the Lantern Center, which will help anyone who's deficient in math or science or geography or English or reading or writing, whatever it is. So there are opportunities.
So education is very key.
It's the whole solution to it. I mean, if you don't have an education, you're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. So that's
Now
a
that
must.
doesn't just mean academic books. I think the greatest need we have anywhere in the places I've worked is people, first of all, have to be accepted for who they are and not judged for who we want them to be. Okay? So if I'm going to communicate with you and you're going to trust me, I have to know who you are and accept you for who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 common questions I will ask out there on the street of people I'm working with is, what really breaks your heart? And I don't want to know for 2 weeks. I don't want you to give me some flippant answer off the cuff. I want you to tell me what really breaks your heart. Why do I do that? Because when they come back to me with an answer maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, it'll be dysfunctional family. My mother said I was worthless. Don't hang around me, I've got my other boys to deal with. You don't mean anything to me, get a job. Get out of the house, you're 18. In many cases, get out of the house when you're 11.
Wow.
So these kids are on their own with nowhere to go, no food, no shelter, no clothes, depending upon who's out there on the street. And sad to say, the people they meet most often are not going to be the helpers. They're going to use them, whether it's for trafficking, whatever it's going to be. It's going to be out there.
So they're really in a vulnerable state in many ways.
They're very vulnerable,
Yeah.
very
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, and don't know where to go. Not to their own cause, but because of the background they're coming from. And as our economy changes and the poor get poorer, we're going to see more and more folks in the same position. So there's that question. And then I will ask them a few weeks after they answer that question, how do you stay alive out here? How do you survive? Okay? It's amazing to me because unfailingly it'll be some spiritual base. It'll be somewhere where their grandma or somebody taught them who God was, what it means to have a family, what it means to have somebody who cares for you. And they'll remember, that'll be a memory that'll stick with them, that there is something out there that was meaningful for me. So that what happens when I get in a crisis, I go there.
Mm-hmm.
That's meaningful piece that's going to help me get through this.
Yeah.
They will quote a Bible verse, they will quote grandma who taught me this, or a person who is significant to them, but it's their spiritual base. People don't like to hear that in the public, but it's where the truth is. It'll be their spiritual base. I don't care what denomination they are. Sometimes they're no denomination,
Mm-hmm.
but that's their core. It's who they are. And they'll go back to that. So then I look at the 2 pieces and I say, so here's where you came from. This is what happened to you. This is what breaks your heart because you were put down or you were labeled or you were degraded or you were useless or so you don't have any self-esteem. I get that. I hear what you're saying. But you got to listen long and hard to get to the truth of the situation. Then you look over here and say, but this person's really creative. Look where they came from. Look where their base is from.
Mm-hmm.
So they got a sound value down in here somewhere that you have to retrieve and get from them to put this all together. So in taking the whole story then, what I will look for is who's the greatest person out here, the most likely person to empower this kid or this adult, and connect them with that person
Mm-hmm.
or that organization. All right. Now here's an example. I'll say to them sometimes, maybe you don't like the job I'm going to connect you with, but you got to begin somewhere. Somewhere in life we have to do things we don't like to do to get to where we want to be. But don't ever get to the part where the job is everything and everything is about power and glory and success, because the majority of life isn't like that. Everybody has ups and downs. And so what happens then is you have to learn to live with a community of people. I said the greatest gift the poor give, and I learn from them every day, is relationships. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, a poor person knows who can fix their car, where you can get a warm night, where you can get a cup of coffee, who has the meal that's being served tonight. That's how they survive, is the relationships they have with people. Those of us who are richer, I guess you'd say, are invested in things,
Okay.
which are going to be gone overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships are going to
Mm-hmm.
stick. Good or bad, they're going to stick.
Mm-hmm.
But they have sound, rich relationships. That's the richness of the poor. That's why I enjoy working with the poor.
Mm-hmm.
Because I learn every day how deep relationships affect people and how they are memory blocks, sacred memory blocks for life. And then you learn how this person saw potential in this kid and brought him along. Brought him along, say, you're really good in this. Maybe chip up a little bit in this and you can do a little better. Look how you've come from. Look where you were here and look where you are now, and keep reinforcing that person. Here's an example. I had a homeless mother, this has been 4 or 5 years ago now, who I took under my wing because she was a drug addict and an alcoholic. So
Okay.
was her father, so was her mother, so was her grandmother. So this is the history, what she's coming out of. So she figured, any way I can hook and crook and manipulate and everything else to get what I want, that's what I'm going to do. So I had to go back to try to teach her, if you want to get ahead, this isn't the way you work. If you want to have credibility, you want to have honesty, you're going to start being honest. You haven't been honest with me for 5 months in a row. Come on now, let's get honest in something to start. Oh, you're kidding, sister. You know, because it's so foreign. But if you're going to build credibility and want to keep a job, integrity is bottom line. You know, I said, I'd be honest with you. I'm a straight shooter. You straight shoot with me too. And we'll get along fine. Otherwise, we aren't going to get very far.
Just some of that basic life building, character building.
It's
kinds of
character
things.
building that they had but wasn't developed. Always had it, I say, because they were created as a child of God. They have it. But in community, we have to pull it out of each other. I think, so this girl now went ahead, decided she couldn't do anything because she's told she's worthless. She didn't have any brain. She was dyslexic. She can't do anything right. And I said, yes, you can. So what happens? The first day I have her in class, I break my leg on the ice down at the museum.
Oh, no.
So she says, now what am I going to do? I said, you think you're out of it? No, you're not. You come right to my apartment. I'm going to teach you right there with my leg up on the chair. We're going to do this. Because if I can do it with a broken leg, you can do it by getting yourself over here. All right? So she comes. Oh, she missed 60 classes out of 123
Okay.
because commitment doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to get on the phone and say, all right, where are you? I'll give you 5 minutes to get over here
Okay.
to come to this class. So at the end of the whole thing, she goes to pass to her CNA class, takes her tests. After having missed half the classes, she passes it.
Wow.
And she's like, I can't believe I passed this, sister. I said, what could you have done had you completed the other 50%? I said, that's why you can't get the scholarship now. You didn't show up for 50%. Look what you did with only half of the class material because you have ability. This is proof that you've got ability. If you need to say you got your degree, you got it. And you got it as far as passing your state boards. That was an incentive for her for the first time in her life to know she could do something, that she had ability. Where is she now? She's working in Chicago, working in a healthcare administration, and now has a son who was in jail, the older one because he was in a gang when mom and dad weren't around, and he happened to shoot an older gang member who was after him. So he's in jail for 29 years. The little brother, who was smaller, Grandma took under her wing, and thank God in school, this is where the people come in contact, the teachers in the school he went to took him under his wing, their wing, and now this kid has a scholarship through college. He graduated from high school last year. But because he saw his mom could do it, he decided he could do it with outside help too, and they're guiding him all the way through. He'll make it. He's goal-centered. He doesn't drink. He doesn't associate with kids who drink because he's learned what happened to his mother, and she said, this is what I did, this is what happened to me. Don't follow it. Because look how long I had to get.
Cycle that's been there for
That's
generations.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
They're breaking a cycle. But what happens with the poor when they break a cycle is the people they left now say, oh, you think you're better than we are? That's the struggle. That's the struggle. And they have to say, I don't think you're better than I am, or I'm better than you are, but I'm not going back to what you're doing. I'm going to move forward.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And that is huge, because that means those people often have to give up their families to be able to move ahead and break that cycle. And at that stage right there is where we got to be there to support them. And say, I'm here. Whatever happens, I'm here. And be there. Don't just say you're going to be there, be there. So for example, if we have older adults now who are the new poor in Dubuque, we have a program called Opportunity Dubuque right down here next door at the town clock. We'll interview people for welding, industrial sewing, because there's a need now for people to
Okay.
work at Flex Steel, industrial sewing. So people who've made their kids' clothes all their lives come in, we'll teach you how to use the industrial machines, make a decent wage, and help support your family where you thought you couldn't do anything. How did that happen? Because Flex Steel said to me and to other people at the town clock, we need seamstresses. Where can I get them? I said, we'll go get them. You train them, and they'll match you at Flex Steel and have a job.
Wow, isn't that great?
That's what we're doing. So in the last 6 years, we've graduated 304 students, 97% are employed.
Well, that's really remarkable.
Now, to me,
that's gotta make
that's
you feel,
success
yeah,
stories. It
that
does.
is
It almost makes
success.
me cry to think of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like people are out there to help you if that person will listen to your story.
Mm-hmm.
You have to listen to the person, find out where they came from and what people they need to be put in contact with to move ahead.
And how do you get in contact with these people? I mean, are you just out on the street and you happen to see somebody that you see is homeless, or do they come to the church?
Well, here's how it happened for me. I worked at the Ecumenical Tower here across the street, and that building housed elderly and challenged. The people who come to visit the elderly and the challenged are the poor. So I learned the poor population by them coming back and forth to visit the tenants of the tower.
Okay.
So when I left the tower, because I got tired of administration, I thought, I'm going to go out and help these people who were coming in here to visit. So it was interesting. When I went out on the streets and they said, there's a sister working on the street, they said, oh, we know her. And I said, yeah, I know you too, so we've got it made. So it was an in right there. I didn't have to start from scratch. Plus, I remembered the poor I'd worked with in other places. They have the same needs. They want to be accepted for who they are, and they want to be respected for who they are. I said, you want respect? I want respect too. This is a two-way street. It isn't one way. And don't give me the racism stuff, because it's got nothing to do with it.
Right.
That's not an excuse. Because every person is equal, and that's the way you have to accept them. That means me, that means you. Okay? So when I'm out there on the street and I'm visiting with people that I don't know at all, I don't know whether they're mentally ill or not, I always stand back a couple arm lengths until I get to know the person, because very often someone who is threatened or is challenged as mentally ill will sometimes call your names or take a swing at you. You don't want to be too close.
Right.
But you want to stand back enough that each day as you see them and you talk to them and say, how's your day going, or what's going on today, they'll be willing to trust you. It took me 3 years to gain the trust of the people on the street. Because what happens is people who are homeless have been told promises and promises and promises so many times that there's just another broken promise. So here's another joker going to give me a promise. So it'll take that long to build trust. Believe me, once the trust is built, you can go anywhere.
Okay.
Because A tells B tells C, we know that person, you can trust her. That's how it works. So if I come across then a mother who needs health care, who needs vaccinations for the kids, I have a connection with the community health center.
Okay.
I'll take them there. They can't go on their own, they need transportation, but I'll take them there or show them where to go and who to connect with to help get the children healthy. You can't start with sick kids. You've got to get them healthy and motivated as to why education is important, and then take some of the children from their own ethnic group who have made it to come back and tell their story.
Oh, sure.
It cannot come from me. It has to come from somebody who's been there, has made it, and now can say, this is what I had to do, you can do it too.
Well, that's a lot of encouragement there then.
Yeah, but it comes from within the community itself.
Grant some hope.
But they have to find it through the stories. You know, we can't go out and say, here's what you should be doing. You don't set the agenda for the person. No, they tell you what the agenda is. Then you figure out, how can I help this work? How can I help this succeed? Okay?
Yeah, so now, like with the new, the new homeless category that you're talking about, people who lose their jobs, and here they are, and then through, a lot of encouragement, like people like yourself, and getting them to be able to say, well, over here, there's opportunity for work, and so then eventually then they get into a place like Flex Steel and they begin to work. But my concern, though, with the mentally ill, where maybe they're just not able to do a job. That's going to be such a concern throughout our country.
It's a huge concern
is
all
taken
over the
care of.
country.
Yeah, taking
But
care of
especially here, because we don't have enough mental health personnel to take care
you got to
of.
go to Waverly,
We're
and
gonna-
if you don't have a job, or excuse me, transportation. And so that continues to be a big challenge that needs
That's huge here.
all of society has to be working on.
Transportation, education, lack of skills, the three biggest problems, the three biggest boundaries we've got to deal with.
Yeah. So in just a short time that we have here, let's say that there's somebody saying, oh, I'm so inspired by what you're doing, Sister Pat, I'd like to help out a little bit. What would you suggest to them to say, if they're really wanting to
Okay.
work with the homeless, what would you suggest to say that this would really be helpful right now?
All right, when I say to people who maybe are not working 2 or 3 jobs, which is what everybody's doing now that's able to work, there are a lot of people in the community who are maybe former teachers.
Okay.
Okay? There are people out there who could teach, could tutor, help tutor these kids or young adults.
Okay.
There are also people who, this is the greatest need, that we don't deal with because we see someone in trouble, we handcuff them and we take them to jail. What does that solve? Nothing. So what we need to be doing is teaching listening skills, teaching confrontational skills. For example, conflict resolution. We have to deal with something better than a knife and a gun or a fist. We've got to deal with helping them know how to listen to each other's story without interrupting, so we understand where the person came from, and then downplay the emotions so that you don't have to use a fist or a gun or a knife, but that you begin to help each other because you have a common base to come from.
Yeah, so being able to go and to listen and to help develop some life skills, as far as how to deal with emotions, but then also working with education. Well, Sister Pat, just want to thank you so much for being part of our program today. You are a blessing to our community and to so many, and a great inspiration. And I just want to thank all of you for joining us this day as well.
Thank you.